as a private money lender, what does a good deal actually look like? Now, this is going to vary from lender to lender for sure, but there's a few things to note here. Now, when an investor or borrower comes to you and they think something is great, that doesn't mean that it's going to be great for you, right?
How could you be so sure?
So think about, what their margin is and if they can afford the funding. Okay. So this is something that comes up with inexperienced fix and flippers I've seen. So they'll come in or even wholesalers, they'll come in, they'll have their numbers figured out, and they'll even have figured out what they want to offer the private money lender in terms of a return. So the interest or the flat rate, whatever it is. And they've decided that it looks great, everything works out. But then the lender comes in and they're looking and they're like, first of all, this doesn't even fit my minimum profit, right? So I had someone submit a request and they wanted to do an 8% return over a 15-year period. And it's like, first of all, I don't do 15-year loans. So we're already not aligned there. And then the second piece of that is 8%. Like, I'm definitely not doing a 15-year loan at 8%. Now, for some people or some funds, that may very well work for them. It just doesn't work for me personally, right? And private money lending is very personal. You can be extremely selective with what you want to do, who you want to work with or don't work with. It's up to you, okay? So, what a good deal is, in my opinion, should be both lender friendly and it should be investor friendly. So the best ones that I've seen, like in terms of fix and flips, let's say, is where the investor acquired the property super cheap. You know how they say, like, buy low, sell high. So the investor acquired the property for, a few $1,000s. Maybe they got it at an auction and they own it free and clear. Beautiful. So we have no lien positions, right? Taxes are paid up, and they just want to borrow the money for the rehab, right? And then they're going to sell it. Beautiful, right? So they already own the property. There's no debt on the property. That means that when I give this loan, I'm going to be in first lien position. They have their rehab timeline. Maybe they're even overshooting the timeline, which is ideal for me. So if they think they're going to be done in 3 months, they're telling me 5 months, 6 months. Love that. Maybe they have a nice contingency line in their budget. So on their rehab scope of work, I'm looking for a good buffer for contingency because I'm a real estate investor and I know something always goes wrong. Okay. And a good flipper will plan for that, in my opinion. So I'm looking for those types of things. And these are the little details that make something a good deal to me or not. So, got that first lien position, no debt on the property. They got a good contingency budget. I understand their budget. It makes sense to me. There's not astronomical numbers for things that don't make sense, or they haven't undershot some of the numbers for some of the repairs. Um, the market looks good. They've already done the CMA, the comparative market analysis. I see their ARV represented amongst the properties that are listed. Like, these are things that I'm looking for that make something a great deal. And I know you're thinking, like, okay, but what about profit? What about interest rate? Yeah, I have my minimum profit threshold, which definitely needs to be met. But if it's at my minimum, like, let's say my minimum is 10% net profit, and everything looks good and it's at the bottom of my profit threshold, sometimes boring can be really good, okay? Because that kind of sounds boring, right? I mean, I'll be much more excited with something that's like 20%, that'd be great. But if they're like, all right, 10% is what I can do, this is going to be my profit margin, this is going to be yours. If I go over this amount, I'm able to offer you a little bit more just to maintain the relationship. Love that kind of stuff. Okay. So this is what great looks like to me as a private money lender. Right. So we want something that is mutually beneficial. And that's how I define great. So I'm looking at the risk involved here. The fact that I'm in first lien position is a beautiful thing, especially if I looked at the comparables and it makes sense to me. So I'm looking at the risk piece there. I may hire a title and escrow company because this borrower acquired this property through an auction. And I want to make sure that we don't have any issues with title and no encumbrances. I'm looking at the structure of the deal, like, does it make sense? And we talked a bit about that. I'm looking at clarity. Do I understand what's happening here? Do I understand how the funds are being used? Do I believe this borrower? I'm looking at their track record. And if everything checks out, like this is good for me, right? And so the converse is like, what does a bad deal look like? Now, a bad deal can look like a lot of different things, right? I mean, it can look like an inexperienced borrower who provides information about their track record, but it's full of failures. Like, and they're just like, yeah, I fell forward. Like, no, not here. Okay. So that could be a bad deal. And you can either not do that at all, or you can build in risk management strategies to help you. I mean, my preference would be to just not do it at all. Another thing that might look bad on a deal is it's lopsided in terms of the profit, right? So maybe I'm not saying that the borrower and the lender has to make the same amount, but if the borrower's upside is like, they're going to make 80% on this. I know that's astronomical, but let's say they're going to make 80%, right, on their money, and they are not willing to negotiate with me about my 10%. And I'm like, then you don't want this money, okay? Because that's insane. You're just being stingy, okay? And that's fine. They have the right to be stingy, but I also have the right to not fund the deal, right? So everyone has autonomy here, but to me, that is what a bad deal could look like. Another thing that could look bad is during the due diligence phase, maybe I find something that is just not a good look. Maybe I see that they have some encumbrances on the title. Maybe there's unpaid taxes on the property, and I'm like, oh, what's going on here? Like, why haven't you paid your property taxes? Maybe they have no plan to insure the property during their rehab. I'm not really a fan of that, right? There's anything can happen during a rehab. People vandalize properties. People will break in and steal your copper pipes. Like, people are ruthless. So insurance can be a non-negotiable. And if the person's not willing to get insurance, maybe I'm not interested, and that's not a good deal for me. Another thing that can make a deal just look bad is the paperwork is all messed up, right? Like I'm looking at the balance sheet, I'm looking at the profit and loss, and it's not really looking like you can afford to pay me back, right? So if I'm looking at your business documents and you're showing a loss for the last 2 years, I'm like, so are you doing well? Like, is this working? And if it's not, that doesn't give me confidence, right? It doesn't give me the confidence to give you money. So those are just some examples of the things that can look like not a good deal to a private money lender. But just to circle back, so things that we look at when we're trying to figure out, is this a good deal? We may evaluate the actual risk profile of this transaction and of the borrower. We may be looking at the structure of the deal or the project. And we're looking for clarity, right? Does everything make sense? Does it actually check out? I also do a gut check. And I know that's like foo-foo or whatever, but I gotta do a vibe check, because if my body is telling me not to lend to you, then I'm not gonna lend to you, even if everything else checks out. And I don't know, that's just me, okay? Like, I know it's not logical, but everything isn't logic, okay? So it's really lender specific. And like I said before, this is a relationship based business, right? And so if you are building rapport with this person, and you're understanding their business and you're keeping up with each other, things are going to be much smoother than if you're just working with someone cold. So keep that in mind.